If you disappeared tomorrow, nobody would even notice. I'm Dan Miller, and my daughter Chloe said those words directly to my face at her law school reception. For 20 years, I'd been the invisible father, working 60-hour weeks as a postal worker, living on peanut butter sandwiches, sleeping on a mattress on the floor, all so she could have everything: law school tuition, apartment rent, car payments, designer interview clothes, nearly $275,000 of my life savings gone. And for what? So she could look me in the eye and tell me I was worthless. But she had no idea what she'd just triggered. See, 20 years ago, I'd been a musician. Had talent, had connections, had dreams. I buried all of it to raise her alone after her mother died. That night, after hearing those words, I made a phone call that changed everything, to an old producer friend who'd been waiting 2 decades for me to come back. Subscribe and drop a comment. I'd love to know where you're watching from, because this story gets wild. Sometimes disappearing is the only way to become visible. You need to understand what being invisible actually looks like when you're a single father. Every morning at 5:30 a.m., my alarm would rip me out of whatever dream I was having. Not good dreams, mind you. Dreams about music, about stages, about applause, things that belong to a different life. I'd roll off my mattress on the floor, throw on my postal uniform, and start another day of being nobody. Route 247, Belmont neighborhood. Same 847 mailboxes every single day for 18 years. Rain, snow, 100-degree heat, didn't matter. The mail gets delivered, that's what we do. But here's what killed me: the physical toll nobody talks about. Carrying a 40-pound mail bag for 8 hours destroys your back. My knees sound like gravel when I stand up. Last winter I slipped on ice and tore my rotator cuff. Worked through it anyway because missing days means lost pay. And lost pay meant Chloe couldn't have her $180 organic chemistry textbooks. Speaking of Chloe, when I'd get home around 4 p.m., she'd already be at her desk studying. No hello, no how was your work, just a hand extended backward without turning around. I need grocery money. The car needs gas. Derek's taking me to dinner somewhere nice. I need money for a new outfit. That was our relationship. Me as an ATM, her as the withdrawal slip. But I kept every receipt, every bank statement, every tuition payment confirmation. Vanderbilt Law School, $52,000 per year. Books and supplies, $3,000 per year. Her apartment, $847 per month. Car payment, $340 per month. Emergency fund transfers when she absolutely needed something, averaging $500 per month. Do the math. On my $55,000 postal salary, I was spending $78,000 a year on her education and lifestyle. The difference came from my retirement fund, the $225,000 I'd been building since I was 25. Every month, I'd transfer another chunk to keep her world spinning. My world? I lived on instant ramen and peanut butter sandwiches. My 2019 Honda Civic had 180,000 miles and a passenger door that wouldn't open. My apartment was a studio in the cheapest part of town, $650 a month, thin walls, broken air conditioning I couldn't afford to fix. But here's the thing that really gets me. My supervisor, Janet Rodriguez, started writing my route last month. Performance evaluation. She watched me work for 3 days, timing everything, checking my accuracy. Dan, she said on day 3, in 18 years, you've never had a single complaint. Your delivery accuracy is 99.8%. You work overtime without being asked. Why haven't you applied for a promotion? I couldn't tell her the truth, that every extra dollar went to funding my daughter's disdain for me. The real gut punch came last Tuesday. I was sorting mail in the break room when 2 younger carriers started talking. You know Miller? One said. Guy's been on the same route forever. No ambition, just punching the clock. Yeah, I heard his kid's in law school. Probably hoping she'll take care of him when he retires. Take care of me? I was taking care of her. Had been for 20 years. That night, I did something I hadn't done in months. I pulled my guitar out of the bedroom closet. A 1998 Gibson acoustic, mahogany body, spruce top. The same guitar I'd played at the Bluebird Cafe back when people actually listened to my music. My fingers were stiff, calloused from mail sorting instead of string pressing. But muscle memory kicked in. I played quietly so Chloe wouldn't hear through the apartment walls. The song that came out was about invisible people, about working in shadows while other people shine in spotlight. I had no idea I was writing my future. Let me break down exactly what staying silent was costing me. And I mean exactly, because I started tracking every penny after Chloe called me financially struggling to her law school dean. Monthly breakdown of my invisible life. Asterisk. My take-home pay, $3,800. Asterisk. Chloe's apartment, $847. Asterisk. Her car payment, $340. Asterisk. Her grocery, living expenses, $650. Asterisk. Her emergency requests, $500. Asterisk. Total to Chloe, $2,337. That left me $1,463 for everything else. My rent, my food, my gas, my medical bills from the rotator cuff injury. I was living on $48 a day while funding her $77 a day lifestyle. But the financial drain was just the beginning. Every semester I'd get the tuition bill, $26,000. I'd log into my retirement account and transfer another chunk. My 401k balance dropped from $225,000 to $127,000 in 4 years. At this rate, I'd have nothing left by the time she graduated. Then what? Work until I died to fund her legal career? The breaking point came 3 weeks ago. I was delivering mail during a thunderstorm. Postal service doesn't stop for weather. When I slipped on Mrs. Chen's front steps, landed hard on my already injured shoulder. The pain was so bad I couldn't lift my mail bag. But I finished my route anyway. Because missing work meant missing pay, and missing pay meant explaining to Chloe why her monthly transfer was short. That evening I went to urgent care, $350 copay for an x-ray and pain medication. When I got home, limping and exhausted, Chloe was on the phone with Derek. "My dad's fine," she was saying. "He's just being dramatic about some work injury. Postal workers are always complaining about something. Dramatic. About a torn rotator cuff. I realized something that night. I wasn't her father anymore. I was her funding source, a machine that produced money and asked for nothing in return. But here's what scared me most. I was starting to believe her version of me. When Judge Patricia Williams complimented my reliability, I shrugged it off. When Janet talked about my exemplary record, I felt embarrassed instead of proud. I was disappearing into Chloe's narrative about me. The sad mailman with no life, no dreams, no value beyond his paycheck. Meanwhile, my body was breaking down from 18 years of physical labor. My back ached constantly. My knees were shot. I'd developed carpal tunnel from sorting mail. At 48, I felt like 70. And for what? So Chloe could network with lawyers' kids who looked at me like I was the help? But there was something else. Something I hadn't told anyone, not even myself, really. Every Tuesday and Thursday after work, I'd drive across town to Jimmy's recording studio. $25 an hour to use the back room. I'd bring my guitar and work on songs, lyrics I'd scribbled during lunch breaks, melodies that came to me while walking my route. I told myself it was just stress relief, just something to keep my hands busy, but deep down I knew it was more than that. Those songs were the only place where I still existed, where Dan Miller wasn't invisible. The night Chloe said nobody would notice if I disappeared, I realized something. She was right, but wrong about who would be doing the disappearing. The disrespect had its own schedule. Predictable as my postal route. Monday morning, 6:45 a.m. I was making coffee before work when Chloe stumbled into the kitchen, eyes glued to her phone. "You're being loud," she said without looking up. "Sorry, just whatever. I need money for books." "How much?" $400. "They're required for evidence class." I pulled out my wallet. 2 20s. "This is what I have until Friday." She stared at the $40 like I'd offered her Monopoly money. "Dan," I said, $400, not 40. Dan, not Dad, Dan. "I can transfer more on payday." "Forget it, I'll ask Derek." She grabbed her coffee and left. No thank you. No acknowledgement that I'd just given her my grocery money. Tuesday brought a new performance review with Janet. She'd been watching my route efficiency, timing my deliveries. "Dan, your numbers are actually above average," she said, walking beside me. "But you seem distracted lately. Everything okay at home? How do you explain that your daughter treats you like hired help? That you're funding her education while she's ashamed to call you Dad?" "Just tired, Janet. Long hours." "You know, there's a supervisor position opening up. $68,000 starting salary. You should apply. More money, more responsibility, more years of invisible servitude. I'll think about it." That afternoon I came home to find Chloe hosting a study group. 3 classmates spread across my furniture, expensive laptops everywhere, leftover Thai food containers on my coffee table. "This is Dan," Chloe said when I walked through. "He works for the Postal Service. Not my father, not my dad. Just Dan, who works for the Postal Service." One girl looked up, blonde, designer clothes, the kind of confidence that comes from trust funds. "Nice to meet you, Mr. Miller." "Just Dan," Chloe corrected quickly. I went to my room. Through the thin walls, I heard their conversation continue. "Your dad seems really nice," someone said. "Yeah, he's fine, just, limited options in life. He's been doing the same job forever." Limited options. Like I'd chosen limitation instead of having it forced on me by circumstances. Wednesday was worse. Chloe needed gas money, then announced her laptop was dying and she needed a replacement. By Thursday, my Friday paycheck was already allocated before I'd earned it. But Friday broke something inside me. I was watching the evening news, my 1 hour of downtime before dinner prep, when Chloe came out of her room with her phone pressed to her ear. "No, I can't go out tonight. I'm broke until Dan transfers money." She plopped down next to me, still talking. "Yeah, this is basically his whole life. Work, TV, sleep, repeat. It's actually kind of depressing." I kept my eyes on the screen, pretended not to hear. Sometimes I wonder what I'll do when I'm successful and he's still just this. Like, how do I explain him to partners at law firms? How do you explain him? Like I was a family embarrassment, she'd have to manage her entire career. Saturday morning I made pancakes. Used to be our tradition when she was little. She'd help mix batter, steal chocolate chips when she thought I wasn't looking. Now she emerged around noon, saw the plate I'd left, and grabbed a protein bar instead. Pancakes are too heavy. I'm trying to eat clean before Derek's parents take us to dinner. Derek's parents. Taking my daughter to restaurants I couldn't afford. That evening, Derek came to pick her up. Nice kid, actually. Polite. But I could see the confusion in his eyes. Why was Chloe's father so ordinary? They were getting ready to leave when Derek asked, "Mr. Miller, what do you do for fun?" Before I could answer, Chloe jumped in. "Dan doesn't really have hobbies. He just works and pays bills." No hobbies. Like the guitar in my closet didn't exist. Like the songs I wrote during lunch breaks weren't real. After they left, I sat alone in my kitchen, looking at the stack of bills on my counter. Credit card statements showing charges for her textbooks, her lifestyle, her future. That night, I pulled out my guitar and played for an hour. My fingers moved across strings like they were searching for something. A melody, a message, a way out. The song that came was about invisible people fighting to be seen. I had no idea how prophetic that would be. What Chloe didn't know was that her boring father had been building something in secret. Not anything dramatic. But twice a week after my postal route ended, I'd drive to the other side of Nashville, to Soundhaven Studio, squeezed between Jimmy's tire shop and Rosa's Mexican restaurant. The owner, Jimmy Castellanos, was an old session musician who understood guys like me. $25 an hour for the back room, he'd said when I first showed up 6 months ago. Cash only. No questions asked. I'd been going there every Tuesday and Thursday, working on songs during my lunch breaks, then recording rough demos after work. Over 6 months, I'd accumulated something I was proud of. 12 original songs, all copyrighted through the Library of Congress. The songs weren't bitter, they were real. About raising a daughter alone. About dreams deferred but not dead. About working people who keep the world running while everyone else takes credit. My favorite was Second Chances, written after watching Chloe walk into Vanderbilt Law for her first day. The chorus went, "Second chances don't come knocking. They slip in quiet as the dawn, and sometimes loving means letting go so the one you love can carry on." Jimmy heard it during my last session and stopped adjusting equipment. "Dan, this could get radio play. Real radio play." "Come on, Jimmy. I'm 48 years old." So was Johnny Cash when he recorded Hurt. Age gives you something to say. He handed me a business card he'd been carrying around for 15 years. Marcus Johnson, producer, Red Rock Independent Records. Marcus isn't looking for teenage sensations. He works with artists who've lived enough to have stories worth telling. I took the card but didn't call. What would I say? "Hi, I'm a mailman who writes songs." But I kept the card in my wallet, right behind my driver's license. There were other things Chloe didn't know, like how Judge Patricia Williams had been suggesting I consider law enforcement for 2 years. "Dan, you've got the temperament. You've got the patient, observant, good with people. Ever think about federal service? Postal inspectors make good money." Or how my union rep, Tony Rodriguez, kept pushing me toward management. "You're wasting your talents on route delivery. You could be running this operation." Or how Dr. Martinez, the neurologist on my route, always stopped to talk about books. We'd discovered we had similar taste in literature. He'd started leaving novels in his mailbox with notes. "Thought you'd appreciate this one, Dan." People saw me, respected me, valued my opinions. Everyone except the person whose opinion mattered most. But something was changing inside me. The songs I wrote were getting stronger, more confident, like some part of me was preparing for something bigger. Last week, I recorded a new song called Invisible Man. It was about working people who get overlooked, about fathers who sacrifice everything and get nothing back, about the moment when invisible people decide they've had enough. Jimmy listened to the playback twice. Dan, this is your best work. Raw, honest, relatable. Every working parent in America would connect with this. You really think so? I know so. And I think Marcus would too. That night I drove home with Marcus's business card on my dashboard, just looking at it while I sat in traffic, wondering what would happen if I actually called. But I was scared, not of rejection. I'd lived with that for 20 years. I was scared of hope, scared of wanting something again after convincing myself that wanting things was selfish. I was a father first, a provider. Dreams were luxuries I couldn't afford. But as I sat in my studio apartment that night, listening to my own voice singing about second chances, I started to wonder, what if providing for Chloe had become enabling her? What if my invisibility was actually making her blind to other people's worth? What if the greatest gift I could give my daughter wasn't more money, but an example of what it looked like to value yourself? I fell asleep holding Marcus's business card. The Vanderbilt Law Future Leaders Welcome Reception was scheduled for Friday, September 15th, 6 p.m. Families invited to meet faculty and celebrate upcoming graduates. Chloe had been stressed about it all week. "You're coming, right?" she asked Tuesday morning, but her tone suggested she hoped I'd say no. "Wouldn't miss it. I want to meet the professors my money's been paying." She winced. "Just try to dress appropriately. And please don't get into details about postal work." Details about postal work. Like my 18 years of federal service was something shameful. Friday evening, I put on my best shirt, the navy one I wore to church, and drove to campus. The law building lobby was packed with successful-looking families, professors in expensive suits, parents who clearly belonged at country clubs, students who looked like they were born for magazine covers. I found Chloe near the faculty table, looking stunning in the black interview dress I'd bought her. She was talking to Derek and his parents, both lawyers, both radiating that particular confidence money brings. I walked over with a smile. "Hey, sweetheart." She turned, and I saw panic flash across her face. "Oh, hi, Dan. Dan. Even here, even now." Derek's father extended his hand. "William Richardson. You must be Chloe's father." "Dan Miller. Nice to meet you." "What's your profession, Dan?" his mother asked politely. I looked at Chloe, giving her a chance to answer with pride. Instead, she was studying the floor. "I work for the Postal Service, mail carrier." "Government work," William nodded. "Steady benefits." Before I could respond, Chloe jumped in. "Actually, Dan's been having some health issues that are affecting his work capacity. He's looking at early retirement options." "Health issues? Early retirement? Where was this coming from?" "I'm not planning to retire." "Your shoulder's been bothering you constantly," Chloe interrupted, her voice tight with embarrassment. That's when Dr. Robert Chen approached our group. Dean of Student Affairs, distinguished, authoritative, the kind of man who commanded respect. "Chloe, ready for your final year?" "Absolutely, Dr. Chen." She brightened immediately. "This is Derek Richardson and his parents. Derek's father is senior partner at Richardson, Hayes and Associates." Pride in her voice as she introduced Derek's family, making sure Dr. Chen understood their importance. "And this is my—" She hesitated. "This is Dan, Dr. Ann." Chen extended his hand. "Dan Miller, right? Chloe's father?" "That's right. What do you do, Mr. Miller?" "I'm a postal worker." "Essential service." Chloe's fortunate to have such dedicated support. That's when something inside me snapped. 20 years of being treated like hired help, and now she was too embarrassed to even claim me as her father in front of people who mattered. "Actually, Dr. Chen," I said, my voice steady but firm, "I think there's been some confusion about our family's financial situation." Chloe's eyes went wide. "Dan, don't... You see, I've paid every penny of Chloe's education, all $156,000 in tuition, plus her apartment, her car, her living expenses, about $275,000 total over 4 years. Dr. Chen looked surprised. "That's quite a commitment on a postal worker's salary. It required sacrificing my retirement fund, living on peanut butter sandwiches, and working overtime constantly. But I did it because I believed in her potential." Chloe's face was burning red. "Dan, please stop." Stop what? Telling the truth? About how I've funded every aspect of your life while you've been ashamed to even call me your father? I'm not... You just introduced Derek's parents by name and title, then introduced me as Dan, not your father. Not the man who made your education possible. Just Dan. The group around us had gone completely silent. Other families were starting to notice the commotion. Mr. Miller, Derek's mother said uncomfortably, perhaps this isn't the best place. You're right, I said. This isn't the place, but it's been happening everywhere. Study groups where she introduces me as Dan who works for the Postal Service. Phone conversations where she tells friends I have no life, no ambitions. Even applications where she apparently told Dr. Chen I'm struggling financially. Dr. Chen cleared his throat. I think there may be some miscommunication. No miscommunication, Dr. Chen. Just a daughter who's ashamed of her father's honest work, Chloe finally exploded. You want to know why I don't introduce you as my father? Because you're embarrassing. Look around this room, Dan. Look at the other parents. Lawyers, doctors, business owners, people who accomplish something with their lives. And what have I accomplished? Nothing. You deliver mail. You've been doing the same meaningless job for 18 years. You have no friends, no social life, no achievements. If you disappeared tomorrow, nobody would even notice. The words hit the air like a bomb. Nobody would even notice. The entire reception area had gone quiet. Professors, families, students, everyone staring at us. Dr. Chen looked mortified. Derek's parents seemed frozen in shock. Chloe, Derek whispered, that's your father. But the damage was done. She'd said it. In front of everyone who mattered to her. She'd told me exactly what I was worth. You're right, I said quietly. Nobody would notice. I looked around the room one more time, at the successful families, the accomplished parents, the bright futures being celebrated. Then I looked at my daughter, who was standing there realizing what she'd just done in front of everyone. Enjoy the rest of your reception, Chloe. I'm sure Derek's parents will be happy to answer any questions about accomplished people. I walked out of that building with every eye in the room following me. But for the first time in 20 years, I wasn't invisible. I was angry, and anger, I was about to discover, was exactly what I needed. I sat in my Honda Civic in the Vanderbilt parking lot for an hour after walking out of that reception. Just sat there, hands shaking, replaying Chloe's words over and over. If you disappeared tomorrow, nobody would even notice. She'd said it to my face. In front of her dean, her boyfriend's parents, her classmates. 20 years of sacrifice, and that's what I was worth to her. But something had shifted inside me. The humiliation was burning away, leaving something cleaner behind, something that felt like clarity. I pulled out my wallet and found Marcus Johnson's business card, the one I'd been carrying for months, too scared to use. Before I could lose my nerve, I dialed. Red Rock Records. Marcus speaking. Marcus, this is Dan Miller. You gave me your card back in 2001. You told me to call when I was ready to get serious about music. A pause. Then, Dan Miller? Guitar player who wrote that song about highway lights? Jesus, where have you been? Raising a daughter. Working a day job. But I've been writing. Still playing. No kidding. You always had something different. Real authenticity. You recording anything? Demos. I've got 12 original songs. Send me your best 3. The industry's hungry for artists with real-life experience. Real stories to tell. My heart was hammering. Marcus, I need to be honest. I'm 48. I deliver mail for a living. My daughter just told a room full of lawyers that I'm a complete failure. Dan, stop right there. You know who's killing it in country music right now? People with stories like yours. Working-class guys who've lived enough to have something to say. Chris Stapleton was nobody until his 40s. Through the windshield, I could see the law school reception still going on. My daughter probably explaining away her embarrassing father to anyone who'd listen. What would you need from me? 3 songs. Studio quality. If they're what I think they'll be, we'll talk development deal. Development deal? $25,000 advance for a 3-song EP. If it performs, we move to full album and touring. But Dan, this means commitment. Real commitment. No safety nets. $25,000. Half my annual salary for 3 songs. I need to think. Don't think too long. I've got a young singer-songwriter named Tyler Nash we're considering. Talented kid, but his songs are surface level. Yours had depth 20 years ago, if you've been living and writing since then. After hanging up, I sat in that parking lot for another 30 minutes. My phone buzzed. Text from Chloe. Dan, come back inside. People are asking about you. People are asking. Now they were asking, after I'd been publicly humiliated and dismissed. I deleted the message without responding. That night, I drove straight to Sound Haven. Jimmy was there, cleaning up after a late session. Dan, you're not scheduled tonight. Jimmy, I need to record 3 songs. Tonight, professional quality? He looked at my face and didn't ask questions. Let me set up the good mics. For the next 4 hours, I recorded the 3 songs that would change my life. Invisible Man, Second Chances, and background music. But Invisible Man was different now. The lyrics I'd written about invisible people fighting to be seen. They weren't theoretical anymore. They were personal, raw, angry. I've been carrying your world on my shoulders while you pretend that I don't exist, working in shadows while you shine in spotlights. But invisible doesn't mean I won't resist. When I finished recording, Jimmy was quiet for a long moment. Dan, I've been doing this for 25 years. That song, that's not just music. That's a statement. Good or bad? Good. Very good. That's radio ready right there. I drove home and sent the 3 songs to Marcus before I could second-guess myself. He called back at 11:15 p.m. Dan, I just listened to all 3. Invisible Man is incredible. It's exactly what country radio needs right now. Really? Really. I want to offer you that development deal. Tonight. Tonight? Dan, that song speaks to every working parent in America who's ever felt taken for granted. We need to get this recorded properly and get it to radio. My head was spinning. What does the deal look like? $25,000 advance for 3-song EP. Professional studio full production. If it tests well, and I know it will, we move to $75,000 for a full album. $75,000. More than I'd make in a year delivering mail. But Dan, this means leaving the safety net. No more postal service, no more steady paycheck, just music. I thought about Chloe's words. About 18 years of being nobody. About funding her education, while she was ashamed to claim me as her father. Marcus, my daughter just told a room full of people that nobody would notice if I disappeared. Well, Marcus said, let's prove her wrong. What do you mean? Let's make Dan Miller a name people remember. Let's get Invisible Man on country radio and see if anybody notices then. After we hung up, I sat in my apartment looking at my guitar, at the song notebooks scattered across my table. At 20 years of dreams, I'd convinced myself were selfish. But they weren't selfish. They were mine. And for the first time in 2 decades, I was going to choose them over someone else's comfort. I picked up my phone and typed a resignation email to the Postal Service. Then I called my landlord and gave notice on my apartment. If Chloe wanted me to disappear, I'd disappear from the life that made me invisible. But I'd reappear as someone she'd never expected. Someone worth noticing. Someone who finally valued himself as much as he'd valued her. The next morning, I woke up as a recording artist. Dan Miller, the invisible mailman, was about to become a very visible problem for a daughter who thought she knew exactly who her father was. Saturday morning, I did something I'd never done in 18 years. I called the Postal Service and quit. Janet, it's Dan. I'm resigning, effective immediately. Dan, what happened? Is this about last night? Chloe called looking for you. This is about me remembering I have value beyond funding other people's dreams. But Dan, you're 3 years from full pension. You're throwing away. I'm throwing away 18 years of being invisible. I've got a recording contract, Janet. I'm going to be a musician. Silence. Then, a musician? Dan, you're 48 years old. Exactly. Old enough to know what I want and young enough to get it. After hanging up, I felt something I hadn't experienced in decades. Complete control over my own life. Next call was to Marcus. The contract you sent, I'm signing it today. Dan, you sure about this? It's a big risk. The biggest risk is staying invisible another 20 years. Saturday afternoon, I went apartment hunting in Music Row. Found a studio apartment 3 blocks from Red Rock Records. $950 a month. More than I'd been paying, but with the advance money I could afford it. The landlord, an older guy named Pete, looked at my application. Says here you're a postal worker, but you want to rent in Music Row? I'm a recording artist, just signed with Red Rock. He grinned. Well, I'll be damned. Another dreamer. Good luck, son. Saturday evening, while Chloe was probably still explaining my behavior to Derek's family, I started packing. 20 years of living below my means meant everything I owned fit in my Honda. The hardest decision was what to leave behind. I left the furniture, cheap stuff bought secondhand when Chloe started high school. I left the kitchen supplies, the towels, all the accumulated debris of 2 decades in one place. But I took my guitar, my song notebooks, the few books that mattered to me. Most importantly, I took my self-respect. Sunday morning, I drove to the bank and made the transfers that would change both our lives. I need to close my daughter's access to my checking account, I told the teller. Sir, she's listed as an authorized user. She'll need to be notified. She's been notified about as clearly as possible. Next, I called the credit card company. I need to remove Chloe Miller as an authorized user and close the account. There's a current balance of $2,347. I'll pay it off today. Just close it. Then her cell phone. 6 years of me paying for a line she used to coordinate activities I wasn't invited to. Transfer the line to her name. She'll handle her own payments now. Each call felt like cutting a chain I'd been wearing for 20 years. Sunday afternoon, I wrote the note. Took me 5 drafts to get the tone right. Not angry. I was past anger. Just clear. Chloe, you said nobody would notice if I disappeared, so I decided to test that theory. I've accepted a recording contract with Red Rock Independent Records and will be working on my music full-time. All financial support ends today. Your credit card has been canceled, your phone transferred to your name, and your monthly transfers have stopped. You said I was an embarrassment who'd accomplished nothing. Now you can succeed without that burden. My new address is 412 Music Row East, Apartment 3B. Don't contact me unless it's an emergency. The lease here ends September 30th. You'll need to find your own place. For what it's worth, I'm proud of what you've accomplished in law school. I hope someday you'll understand that everything I did was because I believed in your potential. But I believe in mine, too. Dad. I left the note on the kitchen counter, weighted down with her apartment key. By Sunday evening, I was completely moved into my new life. The studio apartment felt enormous compared to what I'd been living with. For the first time in 20 years, every decision was mine. Every dollar was mine. Every minute was mine. I set up my guitar by the window where morning light would hit the strings perfectly, unpacked my notebooks, and spread them across the dining table. This was my workspace now. Sunday night, my phone started buzzing. I'd left it on, curious about the timeline of consequences. Text 1, 8:30 p.m. Dan, where are you? Your note is ridiculous. Text 2, 9:15 p.m. This isn't funny. I need grocery money and my card isn't working. Text 3, 9:45 p.m. Called the bank. They said you removed my access? You can't just abandon your responsibilities. Text 4, 10:30 p.m. Derek's parents are asking what happened to you. This is humiliating. Humiliating. Now I was humiliating her by not being available to fund her embarrassment of me. Text 5, 11:15 p.m. Dan, be serious. I have rent due tomorrow. Car payment Wednesday. You're being childish. I turned off my phone and picked up my guitar. For the first time in 20 years, I played as loud as I wanted. No one to disturb, no one to apologize to. Just me and the music that had been waiting patiently for 2 decades. Monday morning at 9 a.m., I walked into Red Rock Records for my first day as a recording artist. Marcus met me with a huge grin and professional-grade coffee. Welcome to your new life, Dan Miller. The studio was nothing like Jimmy's back room, mixing boards that looked like NASA control panels, microphones worth more than my Honda, a team of session musicians who treated my songs like they mattered. We're starting with Invisible Man, Marcus said. That's our lead single. Our lead single. My song, with my name on it, heading to actual radio stations. But the moment that changed everything was when I sat behind the microphone and started singing. The lyrics I'd written during lunch breaks while sorting mail. The melody that came to me while delivering Route 247 in the rain. You say nobody would notice if I disappeared. Well, let me show you what invisible can do. I've been funding your dreams while mine disappeared, but now it's time to make my own dreams come true. When I finished, the studio was dead silent. Then Marcus started clapping. Dan, that's not just a song, that's a movement. Every working parent in America is going to feel that in their bones. Tuesday brought something I'd never experienced. Validation from complete strangers. The session bassist, a guy who'd played with major Nashville artists, pulled me aside. Man, where did Marcus find you? This is the most honest song I've heard in years. Wednesday, we recorded Second Chances. The steel guitar player Marcus brought in added textures that made the song shimmer with possibility. This is album-quality material, Marcus said during playback. We're not just doing an EP anymore. We're doing a full album. Thursday afternoon, while I was working on vocal arrangements, my phone rang. I turned it back on to coordinate with the studio. 17 missed calls from Chloe. I listened to one voicemail. Dan, I went to the financial aid office. They said my family contribution status changed and I might lose funding for spring semester. You need to call them and fix this. Fix this. Like my absence was a problem she needed me to solve. I deleted the message without responding. Friday brought the news that changed everything. Dan, Marcus said, walking into the studio with a huge smile, I just got off the phone with 3 radio program directors. They all want Invisible Man. They want it? They want it on their playlists next week. Country radio, adult contemporary, even some rock stations. This song is speaking to people in ways I haven't seen in years. That evening, I did something I'd dreamed about for 20 years. I played my first live show since 2001. Open mic night at the Listening Room Cafe. Just me, my guitar, and 40 strangers who had no idea I used to deliver their mail. I played Invisible Man to a packed room. When I finished, the silence lasted 5 seconds. Then applause that felt like validation for 2 decades of sacrifice. Afterward, a middle-aged construction worker approached me. That song, damn, man, that's my life, busting my ass while everyone takes me for granted. A woman in her 50s was crying. My ex-husband used to treat me like I was invisible. Thank you for putting it into words. These people saw me, really saw me, not as a mailman or an ATM or an embarrassment, as an artist with something to say. Sunday morning, I woke up in my own bed in my own apartment, with nowhere to be except exactly where I wanted to be. My phone had a text from Derek. Mr. Miller, Chloe's really struggling. She had to move back to campus housing. Maybe you could call her? I stared at that message for a long time. 20 years of funding her life, and she was struggling after 1 week of independence. But struggling was how you learned your own strength. I deleted the text and picked up my guitar. The Invisible Man had finally disappeared, but Dan Miller, recording artist, was just getting started. The consequences hit Chloe like a freight train that first Monday morning when her entire support system vanished overnight. I know this because she called me 23 times between 8 a.m. and 10 p.m. I didn't answer. I was in the studio recording harmonies for second chances, but I listened to every voicemail that evening. Message 1, recorded at 8:23 a.m. Dan, I went to buy coffee, and my card was declined. There are people watching. This is beyond humiliating. Fix this right now. Message 2, 9:15 a.m. I called the bank. They said you canceled everything. What the hell is wrong with you? I have bills to pay today. Message 3, 10:47 a.m. Dan, this isn't a joke. Rent's due tomorrow. Car payment Wednesday. I need groceries. You can't just abandon me. Abandon her. Like 20 years of sacrifice was abandonment the moment I stopped funding her disdain. Message 4, 11:52 a.m. I talked to Derek. His parents think you're having some kind of breakdown. They said your behavior Friday night was completely inappropriate. You're embarrassing me. That one made me laugh out loud. I was embarrassing her. The invisible mailman who'd just signed a recording contract was causing her social problems. Message 5, Tuesday evening, something had shifted. Her voice was quieter, less demanding. Dan, I've been thinking about what Derek's dad said, about how impressive it was that you funded my whole education on a postal salary. I never thought about it that way before. Maybe I've been seeing this all wrong. But message 6, recorded Wednesday at 2:30 p.m., was different. Her voice was smaller, scared. Dan, I went to the financial aid office. They said my family contribution status has changed, and I might lose my funding for spring semester. They want to meet with you to verify our financial situation. If you don't come in, I could get kicked out of law school. Please call me back. Please. I saved that one. Not because I enjoyed her panic, but because it was the first time in years she'd said please to me. The consequences kept escalating throughout the week. Tuesday, Chloe discovered her apartment lease was actually a sublease agreement I'd signed. When she couldn't pay October rent, the landlord informed her she had 72 hours to vacate or face eviction proceedings. Wednesday, her phone service died during a study group session. She had to borrow Derek's phone to call the carrier, only to discover I'd transferred the line to her name without transferring payment responsibility. Thursday, she tried buying textbooks for her evidence class and couldn't understand why her debit card kept getting declined. It took her 3 hours to realize it was connected to my checking account, which now had exactly $127 in it. Friday, she had to move back into campus housing, the only accommodation she could afford on her work-study wages. Her law school friends watched her pack her BMW with everything she owned. Meanwhile, my new life was exceeding every dream I'd dared to have. Invisible Man had tested so phenomenally that Marcus expedited the entire album. We'd recorded 6 songs in 1 week. My voice, strengthened by years of shouting over postal sorting machines, was perfect for the raw emotion the songs demanded. "Dan, this is going to change everything," Marcus said Thursday, after we finished recording background music. "Country radio hasn't heard authenticity like this in decades." Thursday evening brought validation from an unexpected source. Judge Patricia Williams called. "Dan, I heard from Tony Rodriguez about your music career. I wanted to say I'm not surprised." "You're not?" "Dan, for 12 years you've shown more character and insight than most people I encounter professionally. I always wondered when you'd realize your potential." "Thank you, Judge Williams." "It's the truth. And Dan, when your song hits radio, you'll have friends rooting for you." Friday morning, Invisible Man played on Nashville Country Radio for the first time. I was driving to the studio when I heard my own voice coming through my car speakers. I had to pull over. Not from sadness, from pure disbelief. After 20 years of being invisible, I was finally being heard by thousands of people. Friday afternoon brought the call that proved Chloe was finally understanding consequences. Her voice was exhausted, defeated. "Dan, I've been thinking about what I said at the reception, about nobody noticing if you disappeared. I was wrong." A long pause. "Dr. Chen called me into his office yesterday. He said there seemed to be confusion about our family's financial situation. He'd heard about our argument at the reception." Another pause. "He told me that in his 20 years as dean, he'd never seen a single parent sacrifice as much as you had for a child's education. He said what I said to you was unconscionable." The longest pause yet. I know I haven't been fair to you. I was embarrassed, and that was stupid and selfish. You worked hard. You've always worked hard. And I took that for granted." Then came the admission I'd been waiting for. "But Dan, I can't do this alone. I've been trying for 2 weeks to figure out how to pay rent and buy groceries and handle everything you used to handle. I can't. I'm going to have to drop out of law school if you don't help me." Drop out. After I'd spent $275,000 getting her there. "I'm sorry," she continued, her voice breaking. "I'm really, really sorry. I don't know what else to say. Please call me back." Saturday morning, I did something I hadn't done in months. I called Derek. "Mr. Miller, is everything okay? Chloe's been really worried. Derek, I need you to be honest with me. How has Chloe talked about me over the years?" Silence. "Mr. Miller, I don't think. Just tell me the truth." He sighed deeply. "She said you were limited, that you'd never really accomplished anything with your life, that you were kind of sad and she felt sorry for you but didn't want to end up like you. Limited. Sad. An object of pity to be avoided." "But Mr. Miller," Derek continued quickly, "I never agreed with that. When my parents asked where her tuition money came from and I told them you paid it all on a postal worker's salary, my dad was actually impressed. He said it showed extraordinary character and sacrifice." Extraordinary character. Derek's father, senior partner at a prestigious law firm, had seen something in me that my own daughter had missed. "Thanks for being honest, Derek." "Mr. Miller, is it true you're a recording artist now?" Chloe mentioned something about a contract. "It's true." That's actually incredible. Not many people get to pursue their dreams like that. My dad said he wishes he'd had the courage to take risks like you're taking." Saturday evening, I made my decision. I called Chloe back. "Dan, oh my God, finally, Chloe, I got your messages. I'm so sorry. I know I messed up. I know I hurt you. But please, can we figure this out? I promise I'll be different. I promise I'll respect you." "Chloe, stop." She went quiet. "I'm not coming back to our old arrangement. That version of our relationship is over forever. However, I'm willing to discuss a new relationship. One where you treat me like your father instead of your funding source. Where you show respect for my work, my choices, my life. Where you stop being embarrassed by who I am." Yes, I can do that. I want to do that. We'll see." "But Chloe, if you ever, and I mean ever, treat me like I'm invisible again, I disappear permanently. No more chances. No more forgiveness." "I understand." "Good. We'll have lunch next week. You can tell me about your new campus housing situation, and I'll tell you about my upcoming radio interviews." "Your what?" Invisible Man is being added to 12 country radio stations next week. Apparently people do notice when I show up. Silence. Then quietly, Dad, I'm proud of you. Dad. The first time she'd used that word in 2 years. After hanging up, I picked up my guitar and played Second Chances one more time. The song had become a prophecy. 8 months later, Invisible Man peaked at number 7 on the country charts and number 12 on adult contemporary. Not bad for a 48-year-old former postal worker's debut single. The success opened doors I'd never imagined. Radio interviews led to podcast appearances, which led to small venue bookings, which led to a 32-city tour that sold out in 18 markets. But the real victory wasn't my career. It was my relationship with Chloe. We had lunch 3 weeks after our phone conversation. She looked genuinely nervous, like she wasn't sure how to interact with me anymore. The entire power dynamic had shifted. So, she said, carefully stirring her coffee, Derek's been streaming your album constantly. He says you're incredibly talented. Thank you. We're working on a second album now. That's amazing, Dad. Dad. The word still sounded new, like she was relearning how to use it. I've been thinking constantly about what you said. About respect. About how I treated you for years. And you were absolutely right. I was ashamed of you, which was stupid and cruel. I let other people's opinions matter more than the truth about who you are and what you sacrificed. I waited. Let her work through it completely. You paid for my entire education. You sacrificed 20 years, your retirement, your dreams. And I acted like you were some burden I had to manage instead of the foundation that made my success possible. Why were you ashamed? She looked down at her hands. Because I thought success meant distancing yourself from working-class roots. I thought your job title defined your worth instead of your character defining your value. And now? Now I know better. Derek's parents have been asking about you constantly since your song hit radio. His father keeps saying he's inspired by a postal worker who raised such an accomplished daughter and then achieved his own dreams. He calls it remarkable resilience. Over the following months, our relationship rebuilt itself completely. Chloe started asking about my songwriting process, my upcoming performances, my tour schedule. I started asking about her classes, her internship applications, her actual dreams instead of just funding them. She graduated law school in May. I was front row, wearing the Western shirt Marcus had bought me for publicity photos. When people asked about her family, she said, "My father, Dan Miller. He's a recording artist, but he spent 20 years working for the Postal Service to put me through school. Pride instead of shame. Truth instead of euphemisms." After the ceremony, Derek's parents approached me with broad smiles. "Mr. Miller," his father said, "we owe you a significant apology." "For what?" "For not recognizing your extraordinary contributions sooner. What you did, sacrificing your dreams to fund hers, then having the courage to reclaim those dreams, that takes incredible strength." His mother nodded enthusiastically. "We've been listening to your album constantly. Invisible Man made me examine all the people in my life I might be taking for granted." That's when I understood the real impact of my story. My disappearance hadn't just changed my relationship with Chloe. It had forced everyone around her to reconsider their assumptions about worth, visibility, and respect. These days, Chloe works at a public interest law firm representing working-class clients who remind her daily that dignity doesn't depend on income level. She calls me twice a week, listens to new songs before anyone else, and brags about her musician father to anyone who'll listen. Next month, I start my second tour. 40 cities from Nashville to Portland. Chloe's taking time off to attend the Nashville show. "I want to see my dad perform," she told me last week. "I want to watch the audience realize what I should have seen all along." My latest single, Second Chances, just hit number 15 and climbing. Sometimes disappearing is the only way to become visible. If you enjoyed this story, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. I'd love to hear about the invisible people in your own life who deserve to be seen. Remember, you teach people how to treat you. Sometimes the best lesson is your absence.